Now, no kind of tutorial series on animation would be complete without mentioning, at least in passing, the oft-quoted principles of animation, or the 12 principles as they're commonly known. However, though such a mention is pretty much mandatory, I don't want to spend an awful lot of time talking about them specifically, just in and of themselves. Reason why? Well, pretty much every man and his dog has got some kind of tutorial content on the 12 principles of animation. Go peeking around online, Wikipedia, elsewhere, there's no shortage at all of information to be found on the common animation principles or variants thereof. What I will mention, however, is that generally you'll find that the principles can be divided into two camps. There are some which are more technical in their purview and lead us to create animation which is more natural or realistic or similar. And there are also those principles that are more concerned with the artistic principles of animation. In this video, I want to mention first those that deal more with the artistic side. First of all, let's discuss staging. Staging is basically about using the two-dimensional visual canvas of our image to help tell our story. As much as it, affects our characters or whatever else we've got going on in the scene, it's really, where they are in view of the camera, how their poses read from the camera angle. Of course, camera angles and motions themselves can often help to reveal the story itself, and sometimes something that is hard to illustrate in a specific character pose or character motion can help be illustrated better by where the camera is placed. This is one reason, of course, that you often go through a good planning stage with animation, including storyboards to help you figure out those specifics of the two-dimensional image and its composition when working through an animation. Good staging really does help to tell the story of what's going on in a given scene. This also plays into how we pose our characters, of course, because whilst we might have a certain, character pose that is a good, strong pose, it might read better from some angles than other angles. For instance, the good old big dinosaur here doing his roar at the little dinosaur, it plays much better from this second angle than it would from the straight ahead angle here. Working out our staging as well can also be important in helping us to, save time whilst animating. For instance, the good old big dinosaur here, if we take a look at him before actually he appears on camera, we can see that he's just sort of sat there and doing a very slow drift. Let me just zoom in on him more closely here so that we can see him. You can notice that, look at that, his legs are just drifting apart as he's getting ready to come to his starter pose at this point there. We don't worry about, the animation or bad animation happening if it's not going to be seen on camera. You might also, of course, have other instances of this where something is obscured by something else. So, for instance, in this little bit of the animation here where we can't see this character's feet, I could perhaps save myself a bit of time by not bothering to animate the foot systems. Obviously, I would need to animate the steps so as we can see the legs going, but any kind of detail animation on the feet there I can leave out entirely. Another one of the principles is exaggeration. This is the idea that we can use an exaggeration in the pose of our character to actually help sell the action and, of course, the mood and intent and the thoughts going on within the character. It's the idea that you can take, perhaps simpler poses like this that are, conveying a certain mood or emotion or intention and really just overplay them quite massively to create a much stronger sense of what really is going on with said character, pushing them out to greater extremes to try and really sell this feeling that they wish to convey to others around, to really push it and exaggerate the whole thing. Of course, This is something that is more applicable to cartoon animation than it is to realistic animation. If you're trying to do some sort of cinematic type thing with, very realistic character models, then maybe this kind of exaggeration really is, going to be too much and start to look a bit, ridiculous, quite frankly. However, when using cartoon characters, that's often a different story, and pushing things off into extremes like this can really help to create a much clearer read for the audience on what the character is doing, thinking, and so on. Personally, I always compare it to the difference between screen acting and stage acting. When an actor is performing in front of a camera to be shown on a screen, often they try and act very naturally and subtly and so on. If you're in the cinema, it's going to be up there on, a 30-foot screen. There are going to be close-up shots and tracking shots. It's all going to be nice and clearly visible. However, when acting on stage, you may occasionally be privileged enough to perform in a large theatre where you've got audience members sat up on the balcony 150 feet away, and they need to be able to see what your character on stage is doing. In the same way that stage actors have to learn to project their voice so that audience members seated at the back can hear their dialogue, they also have to project their body language so that the audience can read their body language, and they're not just these, almost static little fellas scooting around on the stage a little bit. Exaggerating poses, exaggerating motions even, will increase readability of your character, especially when you've got, much simpler characters as we see here. However, you do have to be a little bit careful with it sometimes, as pushing it too far you can drift into the realms of pastiche. You have to try hard to create good, communicative, striking poses, but you don't want to look like you're trying too hard. We then come to the principle known as appeal. Appeal is something that sort of falls out of all the other principles put together, both the artistic ones and the technical ones, which we've not yet spoken of. Appeal in an image, be that a still image or a moving image, is the analogue of charisma in a person. How much are you, the viewer, drawn in by what's going on? Is it cute? Is it scary? Is it interesting? Are the actions and the motions and the staging and what the character is doing, whether they're in motion or just, sort of standing there in a hold, is it engaging? Does it draw you in and make you want to know more or see more? If it's an action sequence, does it, get your heart racing and your adrenaline going? All of those sorts of things. This can be a combination both of, again, the character animation itself, the posing, the camera work, all of it. Having your character, your scene, your shot being natural and engaging, and most of all just interesting to watch, is what really creates appeal. It's very easy to fall into the trap of just trying to make something move and just get it moving. Animation can be very difficult and time consuming, and you're trying to key a walk cycle for something and you spend so much time just trying to get the keyframes right, get the movement working, that you start to lose the magic, you start to lose the sense of appeal. Oftentimes, if you don't have that, if you're not able to capture that, then having all of the technical efforts work out can sometimes provide you with a less than brilliant return.